Good policy for good economic development required coordination of a whole host of policy areas, whether it be tax policy, housing policy, transportation policy, environmental policy. They all had to be coordinated if we were ever going to come up with a development that's appropriate, that grows the state, but does so in a way that doesn't damage any one of those areas, particularly the environment. We brought together, for the first time, local officials to the state to talk jointly about how to come up with solutions that they needed at the local level. And that initial effort in 2010 of the Moore Commission did a whole bunch of things that we're actually starting to see now. If we don't have common ways of speaking a language about the cost of local government, there's no way to actually know whether someone's doing something efficiently or not. The idea is that it's very difficult to assess your cost efficiencies and costs of local government if everybody has a different accounting system. If everybody has their own way of coding how you classify building maintenance, and it has a different name and a different code, and the job titles are different from this town to this town, there's no way to kind of assess, well, is this town doing it well and is this town doing it poorly? Same is true with education. If we don't have common ways of speaking a language about the cost of local government, there's no way to actually know whether someone's doing something efficiently or not. We established the software necessary to establish a uniform chart of accounts. Towns and boards of ed across the state right now are already supplying the data, so that by the end of this year and into next, we're going to actually have a way of comparing how local governments are spending their money, how boards of ed are spending their money. The other thing we did last year that was also very important was the Nutmeg Network. This is a cloud-based internet system that can tie every town and every board of education in the state into the same network. And why is that important? Well, you know, when you have to buy software 169 times over, when you have to do accounting 169 times over, when you have to do any of the basic ministerial functions of a town hall 169 times over, that is inherently inefficient. And what we did last year was commit to funding, fully funding, the town's ability to hook up to the Nutmeg Network. And by the end of this year, 100 of the 169 towns will have hooked up. The Greater Hartford region recognized that, wow, wouldn't it be great if something as ministerial and easy as building permits, or actually more specifically trade permits, electrical permits, plumbing permits. It's just a ministerial function, right? I mean, the plumber or the tradesman has to come into the town hall, stand in line, show a license, fill out a form, pay the check so they can walk out with a permit and start their job. Going to town hall to get the permit is going to take longer than doing the job. Wouldn't it be better if we could do it online regionally? Any town in the state can now participate in that regional online building permit process. These contractors could just fill in their license information, pay by credit card, and print out their permit and go to their job. The reason why we don't do sort of common sense efficiencies on the Board of Ed side is oftentimes because school districts have different school calendars. For example, bus contracts, right? There's no reason why we could not be letting contracts for bus services on a multi-town basis, right? It doesn't mean that your kid's necessarily going to be riding, you know, your 8-year-old is going to be riding with a 16-year-old from the town next door. That's not what we're talking about. What we're talking about is having one contract that covers multiple towns. So we did a bill last year that requires and puts in motion a requirement that school districts work to create regional calendars, multi-town calendars, common calendars, so that then they can realize the savings on things like school bus transportation and other kind of common sense things. The state of Connecticut had a tradition for years and years and years, decades, of leaving federal economic development money on the table in Washington because they refused to allow regions to form their own region and apply as a region to the federal government for funding. It was restricted. It had to be approved by the governor for you to make the application to Washington, and it was the state policy that no region could apply independent of the state for this money. So all this money was being left on the table. Why? Well, the policy reason for that was that the state wanted to control all the economic development activities and applications to the federal government. Well, you know, if you don't have a very vibrant economic development program at the state level, and you have regions that desperately want to do great economic development opportunities, that policy didn't make a lot of sense. So we established legislation to allow these regional economic development districts to be formed, mostly through the regional planning agencies. That became the basis. There are 8 of them that were proposed throughout the state. They are now pretty much all covered. Most regions in the state are now eligible to apply directly to Washington for economic development money. We can form a common region, a surrogate, if you will, for county governments. Every other state does this on a county basis. Because we don't have a county form of government, this becomes somewhat of the surrogate for counties. And that's ultimately what the regional planning agencies are going to be taking the lead on, being the surrogate for what other states consider to be done on a county level. We also got into the subject of regional revenue sharing, for example. So towns could voluntarily get together and agree to form districts among themselves where they'll all agree not to compete with each other for new economic development opportunities, the new corporate headquarters, the new shopping mall, whatever it may be. They would agree that they wouldn't compete and the revenue generated by the new development would be shared by all of the participating towns. We decided to merge all of our community colleges and our state colleges under a single board of regents that would manage the entire system. Now, you can go and enroll in any one of the community colleges and come out 2 years later with an associate's degree from the community college system in Connecticut, right? And then potentially go on to a 4-year degree from the state colleges. That board of regents model, which was designed not only to coordinate the curricula and the ability of students to get degrees, but also provide the kinds of training that is needed in their particular communities for the jobs that need to be filled in their particular communities, particularly from the manufacturing side. All of that training, all of that effort to fill the unfilled jobs that they were not able to fill as manufacturing grows here in the state, they were being filled. And they were being fed, the jobs, the workers were being fed to them through our community college system. The STEM extension in particular is the most exciting thing that we've got. Making UConn the premier research institution in the country is really the goal here. And to have made the investment in conjunction with UTC, and in particularly Pratt, to create an entire body around the STEM curriculum, to put UConn in the forefront again on that particular area is brilliant, right? And it also focuses on the need that we had for years and years to focus our efforts on economic development, to recognize that we can't do everything, and that a sound economic development policy does not mean handing out a check here and a check there, not asking questions, no direction. Rather, it calls for focusing our attention and our resources on those things that we know we do well. We know we do defense well. We know we do technology well. We know we do financial services well. We know we do bioscience well. We know we do digital technology, video technology now with ESPN, NBC Sports coming to Stanford, CBS Sports apparently is looking to come, and all the work that's going on in Stanford on these fronts, and frankly, manufacturing. These are the clusters that we know we do well. Connecticut is now the destination for anyone who is interested in doing anything in the bioscience field, with not only what Jackson Labs brings, but the connection with UConn and the investment that UConn is making, and Yale, to create the research triangle for Connecticut in this particular area. We're already hearing it. We're already getting the calls from people who want to come to Connecticut, work here in these high-paying jobs at these facilities. It's working. We're talking about economic development, and we're talking about trying to keep young people here in the state. The single biggest problem we have in the state of Connecticut is we've got a lousy transportation system. Young people today coming out of college have no interest, most of them have no interest in owning a car. They want to be able to get from point A to point B using public transportation and not to bother with all that. And that is probably the single biggest deterrent to keeping
in my opinion, keeping kids here. So having easy, successful commuter transport and public transportation is one of the keys to our future. I know the new New Haven to Springfield line that is now in the planning stages and should be breaking ground within the next year or so. I am fighting like crazy to get a train station stop in Hamden, because I know the economic value that has and will have for that part of my town, which is otherwise undervalued and underutilized. And the spin-off value of having these stations and access is critical not only to the host communities, but to keeping young people here.